Hello everyone and welcome back to another Pokémon Emerald video. Today I will be playing through the game with a somewhat famous Pokémon from the first generation. It's time for Nidoqueen to prove herself in the Hoenn region. For the rules, I can only use my starter in combat. I cannot use items from my bag in battle, I can't raise my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. Like many other stone evolutions, Nidoqueen suffers a bit of a move pool problem, as it does not learn many moves through level up. That should still be fine though. The starting moveset is not that bad. Double kick is very useful as it is super effective on the many normal types as well as the loads of Puccienas. Scratch is also decent as it has 100 accuracy and so you can always rely on it hitting, unlike Tackle. The other two moves are not as important. Tail Whip might come in handy at some point, and Poison Sting can be used for some of the grass types. The first few fights in the game were quite easy and I was able to level up quite a lot thanks to the medium slow growth. For the fight against Roxanne, I was quite high level compared to her Pokémons, and thanks to Double Kick being super effective, even though it is physical and so they can take a couple of hits from it, it was still good enough to allow me to get through this gym. Her first two Geodudes get a turn each to attack me, but they do not do a whole lot. Nosepass is a bit more tanky thanks to the increased stats and the potions, but eventually her ace Pokémon falls too. Also, their main attacking moves are rock type, which I resist thanks to my ground typing. After doing a couple other things around town, we are just about ready to leave, but before we can do so, we have to take on May in this optional fight. I got used to the Trico team that she has at this point, so seeing Torkoal caught me a bit off guard, but by spamming double kicks, I was able to get through this fight too without any issues. Next, I leveled a bit more until I got to level 23, where Nidoqueen learns Body Slam, and thanks to this upgrade in my normal attacks, I felt confident enough to take on Brawly. His Pokémons are not that frail and so Body Slam is not a one-shot, but thankfully I can finish all of them before they can set up too much. And now that we have this badge too, we can go to Slateport, where we have to deliver a couple engine parts. But as we are doing that, we are harassed by a couple of Team Aqua grunts, and unfortunately for them, their Pokémons are very frail, and so with just a single Body Slam, I am able to sweep through their teams. I do get hit by a bit of chip damage from the Rough Skin ability, but it's not like that can take me out. Once we are done with this situation, we can resume the grinding and train a bit more, because our next encounter might be a bit tougher. The fight against May in the land bridge is often the hardest one, but today that was not that big of a deal. The only thing that survived my attack is Marshtomp, who fired back a pretty powerful mud shot, but that is nowhere near enough to defeat me. Then, after training a bit more around Mobile, I was ready to take on Wattson. This fight is going to be interesting, because for once I am immune to their electric attacks. I still kept a Cherry Berry because some of his Pokémon have static, and that proved to be a good decision as soon as I Body Slam his Electrike. Magneton is still a bit annoying as it does not go down to a double kick, but without Thunder Wave, that Pokémon is much less dangerous. And for a bit of irony, I am the one paralyzing his Pokémon this time around. It felt good to see Manectric unable to move for once. Anyway, by obtaining this badge, we can use the Rock Smash HM, and thanks to that we can explore the rest of the region. Eventually we get to the Meterfall Caves and later to the volcano. Here we have to fight against Maxi because he wants to activate the volcano to awaken the legendary Pokémon Groudon. By this point, my moveset is mostly physical, and so the Intimidate from my Tiena is quite effective. I am unable to defeat his Pokémon in one hit, and so I take quite a bit of damage, but not enough to pose a serious threat. Once we have solved this problem too, we can go to the next gym, and I was a bit worried about Flannery. She has a Numel and a Camerupt, so Magnitude could still be in the cards. Instead, her Volcano Pokémon used Sunny Day. That is good and bad. I take less damage now, but that also powers up Torkoal's Overheat. That move chunks me quite a lot, but I think I can take a second one. Instead, she goes for Body Slam, and that allows me to finish off her ace with a Body Slam of my own. Now that we have acquired this badge too, we have to backtrack a bit and get to the normal gym headed by our dad. This one is going to be a bit harder. I do not have enough damage to one-shot any of his Pokémons, and so they can chip me along the way. Their attacks do not deal that much damage, but if they get a crit with Slash or anything like that, it could be problematic. Of course, the main problem in this fight is his ace Pokémon slacking, because this thing has a ton of stats. Fortunately for me, it often goes for the move counter, and if you know that, you can play around it, making the fight much easier. Anytime he could move, I used Tail Whip, and eventually I was able to deal massive damage and finish off the Yeti. As a reward for completing this badge, we get the Surf HM, and I could have taught it to Nidoqueen, but I do not think it's going to be that useful. Instead, I used it to reach the other side of the region, where eventually we got to the Weather Institute, where we can defeat the Team Aqua Admiral Shelley. Once we have rescued the scientists here, we can resume our journey, only to be stopped by May a couple of steps later. This fight goes pretty much like our previous one. Marshtomp is the only thing that can survive an attack, and it can deal decent damage with Mudshot, but that is too little to defeat me. Moving on, we can go to the next gym, which is headed by Winona, the Flying type specialist. Just for her, I teached the Thunderbolt TM, because that move is pretty good against her team. I was unsure whether or not I would have enough damage to one-shot most of her Pokémons, and fortunately that was the case, all of them other than Altaria. She hits me back with a decent Earthquake, but since the Altaria's attacking stat is not that high, it does not deal that much damage. Once we finish off the last of her Pokémons, we can get this badge too and continue with the story. The next fight is going to be against May in front of the mall, because I may need a substitute later on. And once again, this fight is not that interesting. Marshtomp can still survive my attacks and deal decent damage with Mudshot, but since that is the only attack that hits me, that's not going to be enough to stop me. And now that we have defeated our rival for the last time in this video, we can get to the Pokemon Tower, where we receive the Magma Emblem from the lady on top. This key item is needed to enter the cave where Groudon is sleeping. After sweeping our way through a bunch of grunts, we get to the depths of the cave, where we see Maxie wake up the legendary Pokemon with the wrong orb. As Groudon flees away, the Team Magma leader fights us, and this fight was quite annoying. Once again, Mightyena and his Intimidate are problematic, but fortunately it uses a Swagger on me. That offsets the attack decrease, but even with a +1, this fight is annoying, mostly because I hit myself a few times. Eventually I can defeat all of his Pokémons and we can go to the Team Aqua base to sort of do the same thing, but here we are only able to find another one of their admirals. His team is much easier than Maxie's, and in a couple of turns I am able to one-shot his Pokémons and get through him. The next major fight is going to be a bit interesting, because Tate and Liza might be problematic. It's a 2v1 and they have the type advantage. Fortunately, Nidoqueen can learn the Shadow Ball TM, which is great in this fight, super effective and hits them on the physical side. I got a bit lucky with the RNG, because Xatu and Lunatone both preferred to set up or attack me instead of using their annoying moves like Hypnosis or Confuse Ray. Once I was left alone with the last Solrock, I knew the fight was over, because even though that Pokemon can take my attacks and hit me super effective, I am much more powerful than it. And so, after having a surprisingly easy time with this gym, I can get the penultimate badge. Soon after that, we have another double fight, but in this one we are not alone. In fact, we have the help of the ex-champion Steven Stone. Unfortunately, my special attacking options are not that great in this fight, and so I have to rely on my physical attacks, but those are made weaker by the intimidates from the Mightyenas too, and so this fight went on for quite a while. I could and maybe should have used Thunderbolt, at least on the Crobats and Golbat. That could have sped up the fight significantly, especially because if they are dead, they cannot use Confuse Ray or anything like that on me or on Metang. Metang was also a bit passive in this attempt, mostly using screens and the occasional Psychic. After quite a while of fighting, we are finally able to defeat the last of his Pokémons, and I even ran out of Body Slam PPs along the way. Anyway, at least this fight is over, and as a reward, Steven gives us the Dive HM that we have to immediately use to reach the Seafloor Cave. Here we meet the other team leader, and Archie is about to wake up Kyogre. To try to prevent him from doing that, we end up in a fight, and his team is very similar to what Maxie had. Fortunately for me, just a few steps before this fight, there is the TM for Earthquake. That move is great, it is stab and so it will deal a lot of damage. Unfortunately, flying types and levitate Pokémons are immune to it, but we'll figure out a way around that. Even though we defeated the Team Aqua leader, the legendary Pokémon is still a Hoenn, and so now that both Kyogre and Groudon are alive, the weather in the region is a mess. To try to solve this problem, we go ask Rayquaza for help, and the legendary third Pokémon comes down from the sky and makes the other two stop fighting. After that situation is solved too, we can resume the badge collection, and Juan is just nearby. His team is a bit problematic, but not that much. I have Earthquake, which deals a lot of damage, but surprisingly it is not enough to one-shot many of his Pokémons. And if they are able to survive, they can attack me back with a super effective water or ice attack, both of whom I am weak to. So yeah, things are not fantastic, but fortunately I can still get through this fight without too many issues, mostly because I can defeat Kingdra before it can set up properly. And now that we have all of the badges, we can get into the Victory Road, where we are soon stopped by the secondary rival of the game. Wally fights us with a very heterogeneous team, and I am not sure I have a great move for each of his Pokémons. But on the other hand, he does not know how to play his team very well, and so even though Gardevoir and Altaria both have a super effective attack, they do not use it because I can defeat them before they can do so. Once those two major threats are dealt with, the rest of the team is not that hard to defeat, and so we have defeated Wally too. After getting through the rest of the cave, we can get to the league, where I enter immediately. I do not spend time leveling, and that might be a problem, because at this point the growth rate slowed down significantly, and so I am not that overleveled compared to what I am usually at. Things already do not start that great. Sidney is a bit of a problem, mostly because of the Intimidate from my Tiena. I am still mainly a physical attacker, and so that attack drop is quite significant. Fortunately, I can still hit his Pokémons for a lot of damage, and even though most of them go from a one-shot to a two-shot, that turned out to not be that big of a problem. Next, we have to defeat Phoebe, and mostly she is dangerous because of her starter Pokémon with Curse. I was expecting to be able to one-shot it with a Shadow Ball, but that was not the case. Fortunately, it wasted its turn going for a Confuse Rain, and thankfully I can get through the confusion when it matters, and I can defeat her lead Pokémon before it has another turn to use Curse. Once that is dealt with, the rest of the team should not be that troublesome. Her Pokémons are almost all weak to Ghost and much less tanky than Dusclops, so I can one-shot them. For Sableye I switched to Earthquake, but that took care of that Pokémon too. Next we have Glacia, and here is where things kind of fell apart. Her Pokémons are way too tanky for me to one-shot, and all of her attacks are stab and super effective, so I ended up losing quite a few times. Because of that, I left the league and got a few levels and came back much stronger. Now, by switching between Thunderbolt and Earthquake, I should be able to one-shot most of her Pokémons, but some of them are still a range. My health and special defense are also much higher at this point, and so I should be able to take their attacks much better. In the end, Walrein is the only thing who survives, and even though she deals about half of my HP in an attack, that is not enough to defeat me before I can take her down. The last of the Elite Four is Drake, and for him I switched out Shadow Ball for Ice Beam. By having that super effective move, this fight should not be too hard. The only thing that somewhat worries me is Kindra, but this one does not have the double team strategies, and so even if it was able to attack, it would only deal some decent damage, instead of setting up his evasiveness a bunch. Even though my speed is not crazy high, especially because I have a bad nature for it, I am still able to outspeed both Flygon and Salamence, making the rest of this fight a breeze. Lastly, we have the champion, and this fight may be very hard too, because once again he has the type advantage on me. If I got here at a lower level, this fight may have been a big problem, but since I got those extra levels, this one was not that bad. Sure, his Pokémons are still quite powerful, but between Earthquake and Thunderbolt and Sludge Bomb, I am able to one-shot most of them. The first one who gets through is Milotic, and once again it chunks me with a powerful Surf. Fortunately, Whiscash does not attack, and so I can finish that too, and Thunderbolt seals the deal with Gyarados, since that Pokémon is 4 times weak to it. The start of the game and most of it was quite nice to play through with Nidoqueen. Unfortunately, the league proved to be a bit too much for it, at least at a lower level. Usually this is where I would end the video, but due to popular demand, I have an extra fight. I tried to defeat Steven without getting any extra levels after the league, and while it was close, I could not do it. Maybe I should have tried him a few more times, but instead I preferred to use the rare candies and get to a much higher level. I did change a couple of things though. First, I teach the substitute. That move should be able to block a couple of annoying attacks, as well as the Earthquake from Claydol, which otherwise would deal a lot of damage, much more than 25% of my HP. Also, I teach the Surf HM because there are quite a few Pokémon that are weak to it in this fight. And even though it is not stab, it should still be very helpful. At least more than Sludge Bomb. The second attempt was quite interesting. Skarmory left at the start of the fight only to come back later, but that was actually great for me as it allowed me to set up a second substitute halfway through the fight. Unfortunately, it did not last very long as it got popped by Metagross immediately. Still, by blocking that powerful attack, I was left with enough HP to take a hit from Cradily and give me enough time to defeat the last of his Pokémons. In the end, Steven turned out to be easier than I expected. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell. If you have comments, leave them down below, and I'll see you next week. Bye!